let's do some tax news. The Republicans are planning to release the blueprint of their tax reform plan tomorrow. Joining us right now, though, is OMB Director Jim Nussle, who's indulged us in this craziness for just a little bit here. He's president and CEO of the Credit Union National Association. Good morning to you, sir.
I follow both of you on Twitter, so just so we're clear, you guys are fun to follow.
Right.
I thought I blocked you.
Tell us, Jim, where do you think this tax proposal really stands? We obviously hear that we're going to be hearing about 20% on the corporate rate. We hear we're going to have something come down on the individual, but unclear exactly where it's all going to land.
Yeah, it's unclear because even the so-called Big Six, the leaders of the Congress that are trying to get together on the Republican side and craft a tax bill, don't appear to even have common ground amongst themselves. And having actually quarterbacked a tax bill to the end of the process from the beginning to end, including the negotiations with the Senate and the White House, this is a tough thing to do, especially when you start off with as much disagreement as it appears they have. And I also hear tomorrow now, and I think this is in the news, that the Republicans are going to take a very different kind of approach. They're going to ask all of the House Republicans to go to a retreat, a conference, a one-day conference, and talk about this to try and get any kind of common ground. So I think it's going to be a very difficult lift if the starting point is where it is. And this is even before they don't have a budget yet for 2018, which they need if this is even going to have any chance of going through. And that, based on what we've seen just in the last few months transpire with health care reform, this is going to be a huge lift.
But Jim, explain this. Just if you were to put this on a timeline and you wanted to be optimistic about it, and it sounds like you're not, but let's say you wanted to be, what would it look like? When could something like this even get done?
Yeah, so step one is you have to pass a budget. Step one is you have to pass a budget for 2018. That is certainly at this point in time looks like it's first and foremost dead in the water. But that would take at least an opportunity in the House to pass, and then a long process in the Senate. So that would just take a month to get a budget passed. That sets up the framework, the procedural framework that would allow you to consider tax reform. Certainly the committees could start crafting work, but not even one hearing has been scheduled or one markup has been scheduled. Let's just give that another month. You're at the end of the year before anything would even be ready for the committees to consider, let alone House and Senate floor consideration. I would say in the House, you certainly could get something like that done, let's just say in a couple of days to a week. In the Senate, with the way the Senate rules are, even under expedited provisions, you would probably need a full few weeks to a month just to work out all of the kinks to get that to the floor, and then you have to conference it with the House and Senate. This is a Q1 at the earliest, so probably April or March at the earliest of next year before anything I can see can get through just the procedural hurdles.
And then as you see it in terms of the fault lines, both within the GOP and within the Democrats, you believe, to the extent you believe any Democrats will sign up for this, how do you see it playing out? Meaning, where's the group, to the extent that we've seen the fault lines within the GOP on health care, for example, how do you see it play out on the tax front?
Yeah, I'm not sure we've seen the fault lines just yet because, again, there's nothing to shoot at. It's possible that the Big Six will come out with a proposal today which will start that discussion. But just coming out of the polls, I mean, I ran on tax reform. So to be clear, I'm for tax reform, and I think many people are for the simplification part and for the part that reduces taxes for growth. But when you get beyond that, it becomes very difficult, particularly when the polls right now suggest that there isn't a lot of concern over the corporate side, which is the biggest lift. They're talking about coming out with a corporate tax reduction down to 20% and individuals down to about 35%. I don't think anybody is concerned about those two numbers, but those two numbers appear to be obviously the starting point that the Big Six are focused on right now. That's not where the polls are, and I think going into an election cycle, that's going to be a big part of the discussion back home for many of these folks who are very sensitive to what the election atmosphere looks like.
But how much of it is the rate, meaning when they go home, if they can say they brought down the rate, versus whatever you think the conversation is going to be about potentially increasing the debt and the deficit, for example?
I think it's more on the rates. I think the more interest will be on the rates. But again, you've got, I think, a situation where there's so much focus right now on healthcare and so many other challenges that it's going to be hard for them. It's the reason why the president is making the pitch he is because they're trying to raise the profile of the need for tax reform, particularly around job creation and economic growth. I think that's the right way to go. But so far, I'm just saying, I'm just giving you, and you know these numbers too, the polls aren't moving. I mean, so far, rank and file people out there, by and large, are not reacting to the rate side of the conversation when it comes to tax reform.